faces here. You got so quiet all of a sudden. What happened? Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Are we all ready for takeoff today?
Yes.
Yes? Are we ready for takeoff?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, most importantly, I commend you all for making it through the traffic this morning. It's about a mob scene out in the parking lot in the garage, so thank you all for getting here early. I'm glad everyone got their seats. We're going to have people rolling in over the next probably 10, 15 minutes, so excuse the disruption. But please allow me to welcome you. Allow me to be the first to welcome you to today's event. My name is Avi Mizrahi, and I'm the branch manager and co-team leader of the Pulse team at Cross Country Mortgage. On behalf of our team, I want to be the first to thank you all sincerely for taking time out of your busy days and schedules to be here with us today. You know, if you really think about it, this is probably one of the largest independent real estate events we've had in our county in quite some time. About 500 agents from across the county, ranging from newly licensed, rising and successful movers and shakers, and if you look around, a lot of the top producing agents in our county are here today, all committing yourselves to growing, learning, which we all know is a true separator. You know, I was thinking about it as I was preparing my thoughts for today, and it's actually a little scary. Palm Beach County real estate is probably on hold right now because all of the control in the inventory is sitting here in the audience, okay? So you gotta love it. Thank you all for being here. On behalf of our entire team, I'd like to humbly welcome you and thank you for attending us at our Behind the Curtain Series event. Now, just a quick show of hands, because I see a lot of familiar faces. How many of you in the audience have been to one of our Behind the Curtain events before? Just a quick show of hands. Wonderful, wonderful. You know, a great partner of ours this morning asked me, how come we didn't do it at the theater this time? Well, I think as we know from our guest, he commanded a room much larger than any theater. We had to take out all 5 ballrooms just to fit the audience that's going to be here with us today. And for anyone at our last event, I think you noticed that they actually changed their chairs. So now it's those reclining couches. So when people are calling you and saying, are we going to have a blanket at your next event, you know something's got to change. We can't let everybody be too comfortable, right? Another show of hands, how many of you are here at a Behind the Curtain event for the very first time? Wow. Wow. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you all for committing the time to coming here today. We understand in our industry today, and in all of your respective worlds, how quickly everything's moving. Every minute something's happening. There's an email, there's a text, there's a call. So the fact that you all are taking your time to share it here with us is something that we don't take lightly. We put so much time and effort, and our entire team of 31 get fully involved to not only help make sure that this event goes smoothly, but we want to make sure that we are maximizing this experience for all the wonderful agents that are in attendance today. Which now leads me to our wonderful host, who I'm proud to call my business partner, Matt Weaver. Now, I've had the true good fortune to work alongside a lot of the top loan officers that are in our county over my 16-year career, all true professionals in their craft. But I can honestly say that there is no man that is more committed, or woman, that is more committed to bringing value back to you all, back to the real estate community, than this man right here. Now, I know him personally, and I know how much he takes it. I know how he's thinking about it all the time. Now, the last couple of years, and year after year, Matt's recognized as one of the top 100 loan officers in the entire country for his closed loans production. But you know what? Yeah, let's give him a round of applause. By the way, that's not about 400,000 loan officers in the entire country. But I can tell you that not a minute goes by that he's not constantly thinking about the new innovative concept or idea or any other way that he could bring value back to you personally and to your business. Now, we all know that Matt has a pretty loud voice out there, right? So I always say his mouth is writing checks that our bodies have to cash. But I can tell you, again, knowing him personally for so long and being so close to him, that it's not about the production. It's truly about making an impact. Now, don't get me wrong. If he actually asked you all for the business a little more aggressively, I'd be a little happier with the production as his partner, right? But that's not at all what it's about. It's all about you. And today's about you. So please join me. I'm going to join you in the audience and really enjoy and learn a lot from today. But right now, I ask you, please join me in giving a very warm and loud welcome to our Matt Weaver.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Wow, okay. So I have to say that it is incredibly surreal to be in front of all of you here today. And I wrote down some notes so I don't forget anything. You know, the only thing I can say is that I am truly grateful to be your host and to help navigate today's experience. And it's interesting because, as Avi mentioned, there are close to 500 real estate agents expected to be in this room. Now, that's ranging from newly licensed agents all the way over to some of the biggest names in Palm Beach County. And I have to say that regardless of your experience and your production, I want to just take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here today. So please give yourselves a round of applause. So I want you to know that we understand firmly how important your time is. And my team, which is just a wonderful team, puts a lot of time and effort into our events before ever sending you an invitation. So when you see an invite from us, just know that we clearly get it and we understand, so we appreciate that. You know I put a lot out there, and I have a loud mouth, and what was interesting is a wonderful friend and partner of mine who's sitting here in the second row. She had mentioned that, you know what, Matt, what's interesting is that when you take the stage or maybe through social media, people don't really get to know you for you, and she's gotten to know me after some time. So I figured I would do something a little bit differently today and give you a little bit of background as to how I got into the business and a little behind the curtain. So I have to say that I love this business and I love this industry, really and truly. In fact, what was really interesting is in my teenage years, I would actually collect postcards that real estate agents would send to my parents' home, right? I mean, it's just totally bizarre. It sounds strange, but it was like they were like celebrities to me, really and truly. And in fact, I remember one time when I was in a gas station in Boca Raton. There was a gentleman sitting in front of me. I believe he was buying cigarettes. And he turns around, and I look at him, and I said, "You're Don Willis," just like that. And he startled him, and he's like, "Yeah?" And for those that are new in the business, Don Willis was an Uber producer in the West Boca market, billboards everywhere, and I'm sure some of you remember that name. It was like as if I saw like Tom Hanks or Marlon Brando, right? I dropped out of high school at 16. And that's something that I've kept very close to my vest for years. And what I did is I was just relentless in reading and relentless in practicing my presentation because maybe I wanted to kind of hide my lack of formal education. I became a real estate agent at 18. And I did that for 3 years. And I did really, really well. And then I converted into the mortgage side of the industry. I guess that's my analytical side taking over and converting me over to the numbers game. But what was really strange is that even though I did well, at that time I still had this mental divide, a divide that I would refer to now as an us and them divide. In other words, the ones that were on the billboards, the ones that were sending out postcards, the uber successful people, that was them. Right? And the ones with perhaps moderate success, such as I was having, and maybe remaining at that moderate success, that was us, right? Those other people were just different people. And then I had what I would call my first aha moment, which directly ties into today. A wonderful friend of mine, an amazing human being named Mary Sella Katia, some of you may know her, invited me to a conference in Atlantic City. And Donnie Deutsch was the guest speaker. Now, Donnie Deutsch was big in the marketing world, but he also had a show called The Big Idea. And he would interview world leaders. He would interview some of the most influential people in the world, ranging from Steve Jobs to a Saudi prince to Snoop Dogg, right? And he gets up on stage, and he's got his jeans on and this untucked shirt and his New York attitude, right? And he's like, you know what I find amazing? He said, what I find amazing is I've been around some of the most influential people in the world. I've been in boardrooms with people that run countries. But what I found so incredible is I never met a genius. In other words, I'm in these boardrooms, and these people aren't even that smart, right? And then he goes on to say, but what I did discover is every single one of them had what he brilliantly called a naive sense of entitlement. A naive sense of entitlement. And I'm going to quote Donnie, so don't get mad. Donnie said, their mindset was, fuck it, why not me? Just like that. 3 words, why not me? And in that moment, in that auditorium, and in that chair, my mental divide that I had, that us and them, that other person was just better, disappeared, literally. And so when I had that moment, I internalized it. And several months later, I was sitting up at 4:30 in the morning. It's usually the time I wake up, writing my business plan. And I said, how can I provide more value back to the agent? That's what I'm consistently trying to write. And I said, I have to arrange or align myself with an industry leader. And I picked up the phone, and I called Mike Ferry. And it took me a couple times to get through, but every time the phone would ring, and before someone would answer, I kept saying in my mind, why not me, right? Who else? My first conversation with Mike was very simple. And he asked a lot of questions, by the way. But he said, of all my 40 years of mortgage lenders calling me, why you? And I said to Mike, because I'm the best. And I'm built for real estate agents. And you know what's interesting is that since then, Mike has been a mentor. He's been a business partner. And more importantly, a friend. And I got to tell you that I value his relationship more than he'll probably ever know. And I'm so humbled that he took his private jet, flew right into Boca Raton Airport to do something he's never done before based on my invitation. My motivation for doing this, why do I do these events? It's simple. Every day, and I want you to think about this, every day, like I go to bed feeling in debt to the real estate partners, so many that are in the room, that actually refer me to their clients, right? They're referring me, the business. So it's that mental indebtedness where I'm waking up saying, how can I bring more back to you? And that's what it's all about. My goal today, here's my goal, is to have many of you perhaps have an aha moment by learning some of the wonderful, fascinating stories that we're going to talk about here today with Mike. So can we all please stand for just a moment? Let us please put our hands together for my friend, Mike Ferry.
Thank you. So I told Matthew when he invited me to do this, I said, Matt, I don't do this. I don't spend any time talking about my past or what I've done. I talk about today and what we can do. So you'll have to excuse the fact that this is a first for me. I've done 7,000 presentations in my career, and I've never spent any time on me because it's not about me, it's about you. So if you excuse the fact that if I mumble and stumble and I'm embarrassed or I screw up, it's because, watch, I don't talk about me, because the most important people in my life are my clients. So Matthew put together a list of questions, and I looked at that question list last night and I said, oh boy, is this going to be fun. Okay? How many like to have a good laugh? You'll be laughing at me today, let me tell you, right? So thank you, Matthew, for that
Absolutely.
kind
Thank you.
introduction.
Thank you.
So he's in charge, I'll just shut up.
It's amazing. So we made it, right?
Yeah.
We talked about
But I
this
knew we
several-
would. The plane landed. Every time it lands, I say thank you.
Mike, let's start from the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in beautiful downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I got real lucky. When my parents were 4, they moved to Southern California. So I escaped the cold, the winter, and the 7-foot mosquitoes that they have in that part of the world. I was raised in Southern California.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me in your teenage years, I believe one of your first jobs was in Disneyland?
I'm sorry?
I believe one of your first jobs was in Disneyland?
Yes, I worked at Disney. My children's mother, and some of you know this, was one of the original Musketeers in the Disney organization. So people always say, well, what was her name? Jimmy. I was gay then, so it was one of those deals. I'm just kidding. And I said that to Jimmy one time, and he looked at me kind of strange because we got to know all those people because we were teenagers, and Claudia was one of the first Musketeers. So I was in the park working for several years. Every day we got to meet Walt Disney, Roy Disney. Those people were people that we just chatted with, like we're chatting with you folks today.
And you shared an interesting story with me about your time working alongside of Walt, that he was so into his customer service that, what would he do there?
If you've been to the old Disneyland, which Disney World is Disneyland times 10. Disneyland is 40 acres, Disney World is 400 acres. And he would sit on Main Street on a park bench. He would do this he lived in the park with his wife and kids. Today, that is called Club 33. It's a very, very exclusive restaurant in Disneyland, and that was his personal residence. And he would sit in the park, and I was a street sweeper on Main Street, so we saw him every day. And he would come in disguise. He would wear a hat and a mustache and funny glasses and goofy clothes, and he would sit, like Matt and I are sitting, and all he would do would be watching the people walk by. And he would do this, and he would listen to what they were saying, and then he would make notes. But he was listening for things that needed to be improved or what they liked or didn't like about the park. And I asked him one time, what are you doing? He said, market research. I said, but you're not talking to anybody. He goes, son, I'm listening. There's a new concept for a real estate person, listening to the clients. So it was a real education because we got to spend a lot of time. There was one little funny thing about Walt. If you called him Mr. Disney, you were fired on the spot because Walt's belief was we live in a casual society and nobody is so important they're called Mr. or Mrs. So I'm now working in Main Street in one of the restaurants. And he calls the waitstaff together and he said, at noon, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton are coming in for lunch. And of course, we're 16. Elizabeth Taylor, oh my God. I'm going, oh, this is my chance. 136-pound skinny kid. And he goes, now remember, it's Elizabeth and Richard. Now, let me tell you something. Do you know how hard it is to have Elizabeth Taylor, Richard in front of you, and you have to call them Elizabeth and Richard? Well, it was hard enough to look at her face. Because what was below it was what she was selling. So it was a fun experience.
That's a lot of exposure at a young age, though.
Yeah.
Really and truly.
Way more than I had had. I went to Drovers at Catholic school. Exposure was a none. So you got none. For those that know me, I have a weird sense of humor. So
You went off to college?
For about an hour. I flunked out my freshman year.
Yeah. But something happened there. You were present at, I believe, some type of public speaker moved you.
I'm sure as your kids go to college, you go over that week before with your kids to get them settled and so forth. And my parents didn't have any money, so I went up by myself. And you're registering for classes, and I'm walking across San Jose State, Northern California. And there's a guy in the corner, and there's about 100 kids, and they're all jumping up and down and yelling. Now, this was back in the early 60s, and there was a lot of troublesome times in the world at that time. I mean, there's troublesome times all the time, but you're only living in the moment you're in. And I watched the guy, and I was fascinated because the kids were cheering and yelling. And I remember Matt so distinctly saying, I can do that. I can do what this guy is doing. And I have no idea why I thought that, but I thought I could. Well, the police came and broke up the whole thing, and everybody went away, and the guy standing by himself. So I walked up and I said, I just want to ask you a question. How did you give that passionate talk, and you didn't have any notes or anything in your hand? I'll never forget, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, son, if you believe in what you're saying, you don't need notes. Well, for those who've been to my seminars, I always have notes, so I guess I don't believe it. Okay? The man's name was Eldridge Cleaver, okay, who was a very, very famous man at that time in America. And I spent the day with he and that group, which was a fascinating education. But the other side, I registered for 2 speech classes my freshman year, flunked them both, which I did, and flunked out of college. So I had a very, very short formal education. Now, I was a terrible student in high school. I mean, I got all D's and F's, and I think they actually moved me along to get rid of me, okay? And only because I played football did I get into college, and I was a lousy football player, but we had a lousy team, so they had the right guy for the team, okay?
So after college, I believe, was when you got your first industry job?
Yeah, I got involved in the title insurance industry.
Okay.
First American Title, which is one of the larger companies. Yeah.
What were your tasks?
What was
your tasks?
Well, technically, I was a delivery boy that was bringing in more business than our sales team. See, I didn't know that having a smile on your face and being kind to people like that. So every day I had to call on 30 real estate offices, deliver documents through the title company, pick up documents. And they put me in a little suit and tie, you know, the First American logo, and I would go out each day and call on these 30 companies and bring the documents back. And Harry Paulson was, I'll never forget, he was the manager. Now, I was being paid $1.15 an hour. Every hour, which was kind of exciting, okay? And I'll never forget, after about 6 months, he calls me and he goes, Mike, you know, you're bringing in more business for the title company than the salespeople. I said, I don't know. So we're going to give you a raise in pay. And I'm thinking, this is going to get good. He gave me a 10-cent an hour raise. So I went from 115 to 125. And I was, you know, I was excited. Now I could have 1 ice cream cone every other day, okay? So that was my first experience. And then I went into real estate right afterwards.
But in the title business, or while you were in the title business, I believe, well, you told me a really interesting story about a gentleman that perhaps came into your office and had some cassette tapes?
Giles Kavanaugh. We had this guy in Costa Mesa, California, and he was a real estate broker, had a little company, but he was, I thought, incredibly exciting to be around. Most people thought he was weird. So I'm sitting in the office one day, and a stretch limousine pulls up in front. Everybody had left for lunch. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't go to lunch. So I'm sitting there in the office, and I want a stretch limousine, a dark green, beautiful car. And this guy jumps out, big smile on his face, and he goes to the back door thinking, who's going to get out of this car? And he takes a briefcase and walks up to the front door, and he says to the receptionist, who's in charge at this moment? I could hear the booming voice. Nobody was there but me, so I walked and I said, I'm in charge. Can I take 5 minutes and change your life? It's pretty crappy now, anything. And I didn't have this, man. He had an old-fashioned cassette player. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I'm going to turn this cassette on, and I want you to listen for 4 or 5 minutes. Well, the message was called The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. And I listened for 5 minutes, and I said, how do I get that? He said, well, it's $150, and you get this big package of cassettes, and I bought it on the spot. And that's how I got exposed to Earl Nightingale. Wow.
Now, you bought it on the spot, and I think you were telling me about how you were distributing these to friends or clients. Or
what I did as an incentive with real estate people to get business, I would lend them my cassettes and say, listen for a day or so, and if you like it, let's talk about it. Well, you know, who's ever heard the name Earl Nightingale? You know, very, 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 I apologize. No matter how we set this up, my back's to a lot of you, and I don't like to do that, so I apologize. It was so inspirational, and people would give me business because I would give them the message. So then what I did is I started buying sets of the tapes that I bought, and I would give them as an incentive. And then Giles Kavanaugh called me one day and said, oh my gosh, do you know that I've sold about 50 sets of cassettes because of your referrals? I said, okay. So he comes in the office the next day, and he has an envelope, and he takes it out and hands it to me. Now, this is the early 60s. I said, what's in the envelope? He said, well, open it up. Opened it up, and it was 30 $100 bills. At this point, I was making $600 a month. And I said, what is this for? He said, it's referral fees. I said, you're kidding. He said, what are you going to do with the money? I said, I've never seen this much money in my life. I mean, it was $3 grand in cash. I actually thought he was a drug dealer from Miami. It was the 60s, right? So I bought a new Porsche for cash that afternoon, which I did, okay? It didn't make my wife happy, but you know, life's a bitch. But I remember he said to me, how would you like to have that much money every couple of weeks? He goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going with you. I just walked out. And I did. I walked out. I didn't even quit. I just left, okay? And in the next 18 months, I was very lucky. There was, I think, 1,200 salespeople in Nightingale's company, and I became the #1 salesperson. So it's just, you know, but I believe in the product. I still believe in it more today than ever. And I believe in people, so it was a good match, the product and the people. So it's easy to sell.
But I remember you telling me about the first call that you got from Earl.
I'm sitting with Giles. We're strategizing who I'm going to sell, because Giles was in heaven, because the cassettes sold for $150. And he paid $50, so it was a $100 profit. So he gave me $50, he kept $50. I thought, well, you know, in real estate, if you're on a 50% split in the 60s, it's a fair split, so I was okay. So one day I'm in the office, and Giles on the phone, and he goes, Earl wants to talk to you. I said, Earl who? He said, Earl Nightingale. I said, sure. So I took the phone. Hello. Hi, Mike. This is Earl Nightingale. I said, yeah. And I hung up. Because Giles always was playing fun little hoaxes on people. He goes, you hung up on Earl Nightingale. I said, Giles, give me a break. Phone rings. Hello. Mike, it's Earl Nightingale. Sure. Who is it? Earl Nightingale. I hung up again. Giles got mad. He goes, I hope he calls back. I said, I don't know who it is. Phone rings. He said, you answer it. Guy goes, don't hang up. Well, Earl's voice is very distinct, so I didn't. And then they took me onto the staff in Chicago, which I worked on for a couple of years. You know.
Wow.
So I guess I have Earl told me we were in Sarasota 15, 18 years ago, right before he passed away. And he said, you're one of the only people that's ever hung up on me twice in a row. Get used to it.
So let's dive into some of the time with Earl. And what are some of the lessons that you still hold near and dear to you to this day that can be applied virtually to anyone in this room?
If you've ever heard any of his messages, you know, they're the simplest, but the most profound. Because what Earl preached was common sense. So the message that you become what you think about all day long was the most profound message, which came off the original recording of The Strangest Secret that he recorded in 1956. And I think they sold 15 or 18 million copies of that record in the first 10 years for like $25 each. And a record costs about $1. So you can imagine the income that Earl had from his message. So I have lived by the message all my life that you become what you think about. So people say to me, you know, why don't you talk about your past? Because that's the past. I'm thinking about what's going to happen today and tomorrow and my future, okay? So probably the most important, but the second was the fact that I wasn't, you know, I didn't realize that you and I had the same background on our non-education, okay? I didn't quit school at 16 because they were trying to throw me out. So I was trying to stay in because I didn't want to get in trouble at home. So I wasn't real bright. So Earl convinced me to start reading books. So probably the most important lesson that Earl gave me is that he said, if you can read 250 books a year, someday you'll be smart. Now at that point, I was reading Playboy for the articles, of course. But I always tell people you should read Penthouse, which you guys should read, and you should read National Geographic. Well, because they both have pictures of beautiful places you are not going to visit. Okay, so and some of you won't get that, but it's okay. So Earl fanatically, Matt, fanatically got me to read. And I've read 10,000 books since
10,000?
Since between age 20 and 73, I've read 10,000 books.
Wow.
You know, it's a lot, but you know, I don't have an education, so my education is talking to great people and reading books.
You told me that Earl was a speed reader.
Earl would read a 250-page book in 7 or 8 minutes and then tell you everything in it. It was really depressing, okay? I mean, he could walk into Barnes & Noble, read 15, 20 books, be there an hour, leave, and never have to buy anything. I mean, he virtually was a genius, by far. I mean, Walt Disney said Earl Nightingale was the smartest man in America. Walt Disney was not a dummy, okay? So it was quite a compliment, and to hear that kind of message, you know, from one great person to another.
And how long did you work for Earl?
Just under 4 years. At that time, I had gotten married, had a couple kids. I was traveling all over the United States representing the company. And, you know, little tiny kids, and naturally you want to be home at least some point. So that's when I decided to become a residential real estate person.
Essence of Success, your favorite book by Earl? Essence of Success?
If you've never read the book, The Essence of Success, I strongly recommend it. Written by Earl Nightingale. You have to go online to get it. They printed, I think, 50,000 copies. They were sold immediately. They're still in circulation online. It's 100 two-page stories of what he thinks are the most important things we need to know to live a good life. It's a wonderful book to read. I've read it 100 times.
And you were sharing with me yesterday about his fascination of living in California, looking at these yachts with all these people partying and having fun. And you kind of finished that for me.
I asked Earl how he got started. He was 13 or 14 years old during the Great Depression of 27, 28, 29, 30. And most of the world was dying, like we had from 2007 to 2011 in most of the world again. And he was standing on the beach, and he had, you know, shoes that had cardboard in them because they couldn't afford to have shoes. And he would watch the boats in the harbor because, you know, during this last recession, a lot of us made a lot of money because not everybody had to lose everything, you know, but that's part of the game of life. Some win, some lose. It balances out, hopefully. So he would stand on the beach and watch the big yachts. Now, this was in 1938, 1940, people partying, having fun, and he kept saying to himself, why can't I be like that? Kind of that same message that you had just shared. And that's when he said, the only way I'm going to learn how they live is to read about them. So he became a compulsive reader.
Wow.
And that's what helped me learn how to read, because I couldn't read at all when I started.
And you shared a quote with me yesterday. Singleness of purpose is the answer to production.
The biggest challenge we have in real estate is the amount of distractions we have in real estate. Today, and what's fun is they always have to have a new title for the distractions, because that's one of the things our industry does best. They create titles to screw us up. So the latest title is disruptions. What is the disruptions today in real estate? The fact that you decided to name them is the biggest problem, okay? And what Earl taught was if you focus on something and you don't take your mind off it, you're going to get to it every time. And that's singleness of purpose. So when I started in real estate, I focused on prospecting and listing property. And I became obsessed with prospecting and listing property. So I prospected every day and I listed property every day. My singleness of purpose is what got me the income level that I wanted to attain for myself and my family. And Earl says you become what you think about, which is singleness of purpose. Now, I always kid about the handsome men in the room, and I'll say, it's not really true, Matt, that you become what you think about, because if it was, most guys would be girls. Am I right or wrong, guys? Nobody wants to admit it, but it's true. Okay?
So Mike Ferry being an agent.
Yes.
Who was your first broker?
Patrick McVeigh was my first personal friend that I had sold the Nightingale materials to. And then when I said, I'm considering real estate, he said, well, come to work for me. And it was an interesting company, because you can picture 1970, okay? One office, 30 people, which was a pretty good sized office at that time. And there were 3 big companies in Southern California. Forrest E. Olson, which was the forerunner to what became Coldwell Banker, which is huge. A company called Walker & Lee, which eventually, like a lot of those big companies, disappeared. and I can't remember, FM Tarbill, which also disappeared. Now, these companies all had, Jim, hundreds of offices, thousands of agents. In Huntington Beach, California, each had like 10 offices. We had one little office. And if you can picture, in 1970, we were doing 100 deals a month with 30 people out of this little office. Because Pat McVeigh was a taskmaster. I mean, either you did what he said, and I know this sounds strange, he'd punch you. Man or woman. I mean, I told you to do that. I didn't want to. Whap! Oh, geez, okay, I'll do it. So I went to Catholic school. I've been hit enough. I didn't want to get punched anymore, so I did everything Pat said, and I did it verbatim as he said to do it, which most of the agents did. So we had an incredible, we were the first office in Huntington Beach to take 100 listings in a month. Okay, that had never been done before. But we all worked on prospecting and taking listings every day. And you guys and gals know, if you take listings, I know you all have teams, but if you take listings, the Board of Realtors becomes your team. Because the Board of Realtors represents all the buyers, and the good agents represent the sellers, and there's not a lot of good agents that represent sellers, so you can control the town by controlling the inventory. It's really not brain surgery.
And how was your performance as an agent? As an agent? Well,
at that time, and now I had 4 little kids, Matt, Tom, Michelle, and Pat. And, Claudia didn't work because she's caring for the kids, and we'd upgraded the home we lived in, and we had nice cars, so I had to make money. And, in 1970, 71, 72, making $100,000 a year as an agent was a lot of money because our average sales price was $30,000. So, 6% of $30,000 is $1,800, and it was all co-op transactions, so $900, and we're on 50% splits, so we're getting $300 to $400 per transaction. So to make $100,000, we had to sell a lot of houses. So, I was never the top agent in the company. Paul Callahan, Vicki Joyce, Betty Waller, these people really did a lot of business. I was always in 3rd or 4th place. They were very experienced. I was new, and I was chasing good people because I love the chase, okay? And I love the competition, so it was easy to have good production. But my specialty was, I averaged about between 15 and 16 residential listings a month. I did that for a couple of years.
Wow.
Which, by the way, I believe anybody here could do. That's my strongest belief. If I did it with an 81 IQ, you guys can do it, okay? And the only reason you don't is because you don't want to, okay? Or we can cut your commission to $350 per deal. You'll start doing it.
So we talked about your first mentor, Earl.
Yes.
Let's move to your second mentor by the name of Mike Vance. And
I have to say, how I met Mike, I represented Earl's company on a national level. That's how we met.
Okay.
In Chicago.
And can you explain who Mike Vance is?
Mike Vance, you've heard of Disney University? Ring a bell? Okay, Mike was the founder of Disney University for Walt Disney. He was the president of it. He was Walt's, what I would call, creative partner. He was the guy with Walt Disney that basically was the one behind the creation of Disney World in Orlando, not too far from here. Virtually, Earl Nightingale said that Mike Vance was the smartest man he ever met. So I'm sitting right where Kenny's sitting in the front row. We have 1,200 of our salespeople at a 3-day conference in Chicago, and I'm on the staff. And this guy walks out on the stage, I'll never forget it. And it was Mike Vance, and he's introduced as being the creative force behind Disney. And I'm going, well, I worked at the park. I don't remember this guy. So I'm very attentive. In fact, I was so attentive, I guess I was staring so hard that as soon as he stopped the speech, he walked around and said, "Who the hell are you?" I said, "My name is Mike." He goes, "Well, why are you looking at me like that?" I was so fascinated because the first thing he said was, "What do you want to talk about today as a group?" That's an unusual speaker. We usually have a topic. He said, "I can talk for 3 or 4 hours on any topic, so pick one." I said, "Well, selling." He said, "Okay." And he told me later, if you'd have said love, he would have talked about it. If you'd have said growth hormones, he would have talked about it. If you'd have said management, he was so smart. So virtually, I met him the next week. He lived in Marina Del Rey, California, which is in Los Angeles. And he lived in a high-rise penthouse, and I'll never forget walking in. It was like 6,000 square feet, 2-story, overlooking the ocean. I mean, I was like, oh my God. so I said to him, would you help me? I want to be a speaker someday. And he said, come on along. So I left Nightingale, left real estate, and went to work with Mike Vance.
Wow. Wow. Some lessons learned from Mike that you hold near and dear to you to this day.
There's a couple of books that you can read called Think Out of the Box, okay? And the author is Mike Vance and Diane Deacon, D-E-A-C-O-N. Some of you have read them. Fascinating books, because Diane Deacon was Mike's partner in building his company, and she was the one to articulate Mike's ideas. I mean, this guy virtually was a creative genius. He could walk into a room, and in 7 or 8 minutes, he could enhance this experience to a level most of us couldn't even understand, much less accept. So he wrote 2 books with Diane, Think Out of the Box, and then Think Out of the Box #2. And they're extremely well read by big business people. Mike Vance was a personal consultant to Old Man Mars, the star of Mars Candy. He was a personal consultant to Steve Jobs from Apple for years and years and years. So he was a consultant to some of the people that we all go, oh my gosh. So I asked him if he would coach me in mentoring. So the message he gave me, which I really is still the most important thing, is look at everything the way everybody does, and then don't do it. Look at everything everybody does, and then don't do it. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you got to get into the mode that the masses are never going to be productive. The individuals are what produces. So he said, if you're going to be a speaker, be an individual. And then he said to me, I'll never forget, what about you do you think is unique as a speaker? I don't know anything. He said, well, you were a successful agent. Can you tell people the truth on how you did it? I said, they don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear how you do it. They want to hear all the bullshit about the social media and how you can have a team and make millions without working. I said, if I have to talk about what people want to hear. He said, if you talk about what they want to hear, you'll have a short career. I'm just finished my 43rd year doing this. I guess some people want to hear what it takes to build a strong real estate business. So think out of the box. Thank you. It was painful because you talk about massive rejection. I can't even tell you in the 80s, my friend over here from Ohio, where did we meet? What city was it? Akron, Ohio. I had seminars, Matt, where I would be hired by a board of realtors in Ohio, Oklahoma, Iowa, those kind of places, which are not exactly Newport Beach, California. Okay, I mean, they're lacking ocean, money, people, outside of that, I would do a seminar for 3 hours, and at the break, everybody would leave. I'd come back, and there wouldn't be anybody there. I would say to the guy that hired me, I don't think they liked it. Okay, that happened to me dozens of times, where I would do a seminar starting with 1,000 people. End of the day, there'd be 50. I mean, that was just kind of routine for me. But that's what Mike Vance planted in my head. If you're going to only discuss things everybody wants to hear, they're going to get bored with the message fast. So I discuss things that most agents don't want to hear, but those that want to hear it and use it really do well. So it was a great lesson.
Yeah. And you shared, you shared a book with me that Mike shared with you called the 4 Levels of Learning.
Well, it was a book written by, he's a great author, and I hope you enjoy him, okay? Abraham Maslow is the author, Abraham Maslow, okay? And probably you read the book in high school or in college, because it was pretty much, well, I will state that, depending on your age. Who in the room is age 50 or above? Let's see where you are. Wow, it's most of the room. Gosh darn it, Florida's keeping its trend. Okay. I was thinking coming over, we're staying at the Marriott around the corner, and Sabrina was with me, and we lived in Naples for 7 years. We left there a couple of years ago. We would spend from October to 1st of April in Naples, because it is really, if you want to make sure that nothing is going to happen in your life, live in Naples. Okay. But for me, because my lifestyle, it was a great place, okay? Susan lives there, she understands. So I'm driving over with Sabrina this morning, and she goes, do you miss Florida? And I said, I'll never forget. and I've never shared this with you. Years ago, a person said to me, do you have to go to Florida often? I said, well, I do a lot of seminars there. What's it like? It's very flat. You know, a mountain range is a freeway overpass. I said, it's really humid, and it's really old. I mean, you know, this is probably the oldest population next to Arizona in the nation, except for a rest home, which is most of Florida, okay? So I have no idea what the question was, but that's decided what I decided to say. The hell were you talking about, Matt?
But the 4 levels of learning.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The reason.
I have a very short attention span. I found out that I've got all those diseases that they now give you medication for. I just drink vodka right out of the bottle. So, the book was designed, and Mike pounded it in my head. Because the question is, how do we motivate a real estate person to produce at a higher level? In the book, he talked about the fact that the first level of learning is what he called unconscious incompetence. And every real estate agent that is new is unconsciously incompetent. You don't know anybody, you don't know anything, you don't know how to sell, you don't have any listings, you don't have any sales, you don't have any income, you don't have any pendings. I mean, you can't even find the office, okay? Without if you don't have a business card, you get lost. And then when you start to gain some knowledge, Mike said you move up to what is called conscious incompetence. And that is where you're basically stupid because somebody said, you're really stupid. You might want to change that behavior. Then he moved up to what he called conscious competence, where you really begin to know what you know, which is where ego plays a big part in our industry, okay? You get to the level where you can figure this thing out pretty good. But then he said you move up to the highest level, which is unconscious competence. And that's where you do what you do so well you don't have to think about it. So he said the goal, and that's why he pounded this, keep reading and learning, move up to the top. And I said, well, when you get to the top, what do you do? Here's the catch. You guys ready? Hello? Yes. Okay, because I didn't know if you were there. Sometimes, you know, it's like talking to a painting, you know. Except when they smoke. I've never seen a painting smoke. So he said, what do you do when you get to the top? Listen to what he said to me. Find somebody that will introduce you to things you know nothing about, which takes you from conscious competence to unconscious incompetence. So my life has been a revolving around these 4 levels. Because every time I thought I was smart, I would talk to Earl or to Mike, and then I would find out how dumb I am. So then I would keep learning and reading and meeting all these wonderful people that I've got to know in my life. And I've learned so much. So his message was really, if you keep learning, you're going to find a lot of things you know nothing about. And if you're willing to address it, you're going to get smarter before the day ends.
Wow.
Unbelievable guy. If you go to Earl Nightingale's company, Nightingale Conant, and download or purchase whatever they sell on Mike Vance. It is the best material you'll ever hear. Michael Vance.
Wow, thank you. Your third mentor, maybe not as popular in terms of name, but yeah. Dr. Gunther Kloss.
Dr. Gunther Kloss, Mike Vance said to me one day, okay, you've learned a lot, right? This was 5 or 6 years, and I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'm going to, Saturday morning at the University of California, Irvine, there's a guy named Gunther. And he's going to do a lecture, and I want you in the front row. I told him you're going to be there. I said, well, who is it? He said, don't even worry about it. Go to this seminar. So there was like 1,000 people. I'm sitting where Avi's sitting. And this guy walks on the stage. He's from Hamburg, Germany. What I didn't know, the wonderful book, Management by Objectives with Peter Drucker, was co-authored by Dr. Gunther Kloss, okay? A genius of a man. But he did all of his seminars and lectures to upper management of major corporations all over the world. So if you can picture, in the mid-'70s, he was getting paid $30,000, $50,000 a day to speak to a group like you guys and gals today. And so I introduced myself, and he said, Mike Vance told me you're going to be here. And he said, I'm going to eventually convince you to leave Mike and come to work with me. I said, well, how do you know? He said, well, Mike told me about you, and I need people like you. And about 2 weeks later, I was working for Gunther, okay? What I was doing is I had started my speaking career. It was 1975. And he was, in my opinion, he's the most powerful speaker probably ever been on a platform, okay? His delivery, his message, his style. I mean, I wish that Mike Vance and Gunther were not passed away, because I towards the end of their lives, I brought them to some of my events to introduce them to my clients. And every client that met them, they were in awe. So you can go online and look up Dr. Gunther Klaus, Klaus, and find some of his materials. I've never told you this. Gunther attracted a terrible bacteria disease in doing a seminar in a remote part of Mexico. And he came back and he was very ill. And he was married to a wonderful lady, and she was pregnant with twins, okay, a boy and a girl. And unfortunately, Gunther passed away 2 months before the birth. And he wrote a letter, and excuse me, because if my voice breaks, he wrote a letter to these two children on how he wanted them to live their life. Wow. It was incredible. And after he passed away and the children were born, his wife sent me the letter, okay, about how to live your life, okay, as good human beings. It was, I couldn't help but cry for the loss of my mentor, but I couldn't help but cry of the joy of knowing what he was passing on, okay, because he was that impactful.
Wow. Thank you.
See why I don't talk about my past? I don't want you guys to see this side of me, for God's sakes. I want you to see that tough guy that spits on the stage. Okay.
So, there's a couple
I
of...
need vodka.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that you shared with me that Dr. Gunther Klaus shared with you, and I remember visiting your headquarters for the first time. Yes. And you shared this story on stage with what I'm about to say. And I walked into your office, your personal office, and I immediately looked at your desk.
Yes.
And your desk was 100% cleared with no drawers.
Yeah.
So what was that all about?
Well, Gunther had a lot of wonderful management leadership lessons, and one of them was never touch the same piece of paper twice. And he drilled that into my head. So I said, well, where do you put your paper? Or you have to have drawers on your desk. He said, well, then you're touching it twice. So I have a very expensive desk with no drawers, because anything that I receive, either I deal with and respond to, hand it off to my assistant, or get rid of it. So there's nothing on my desk. There's no reason to have anything on my desk. Now, when I get to the office, I'll put my iPad and my phone on my desk, and I'll have a pen and a notepad, because I always have a dozen notepads with me. But he taught me that the most important thing, and I'm going to talk about it later also, you got to get used to getting rid of stuff. Because we just live our life accumulating stuff. And Gunther had a mansion next to the Hilton estate in Bel Air. Okay, now Bel Air, California is some of the most expensive real estate in the world. And if you're up at the top of Bel Air, where you can see you can see God from there. You're so up and you're so out and you're so wealthy that you can really control the world. And he had this big 20,000 square foot home in his master bedroom. I'll never walk in, and I look up and the ceiling is all glass. I said, whoa. And he goes, yeah, pretty nice. He said, I had that. It was as big as this partition where these three lights are. And it was 20 feet high. And he goes, watch this. And he sat on the bed and he pressed a button, and the bed tilted up. And at the end of the bed, he had a big bathtub, and he would just slide right off the bed into the tub. Oh my God. I'd never seen anything like this before. And then he could press a button and the entire ceiling would disappear for the sky. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Oh, thank you. He drank a bottle. You have to always be sitting when you drink a lot of vodka, okay? But Gunther was unique. Gunther collected antique books, first edition, and because of that, I collect antique books in first edition. He had several thousand pieces of incredible art. Because of that, my wife and I collect a lot of art. He collected gold and diamonds. And for those that know my wife, Sabrina, I try to decorate her like a Christmas tree, okay? With lots of sparkle. So he has a big influence on my life. He's the one that taught me, most people don't know how to live. So if you learn how to live, enjoy the experience.
Wow.
Because most people don't know how to live. Floyd Wickman, who's one of my favorite people in the world, who a lot of you know. Floyd and I decided to invite Floyd to lunch. He was in California. So Gunther and I and Floyd are having lunch. And Floyd at that time was a heavy smoker. And Gunther was, German, 6 foot tall, 160 pounds, steel blue eyes, square jaw, that heavy accent, the gray hair. I mean, he was the perfect German. I mean, he just, boom! It was like this. I have papers in order. I mean, that's the way he operated his life. So we're sitting at lunch, and Floyd takes out his cigarette and lights it. Gunther reaches over and pulls it out of his mouth, throws it on the ground, stomps on it. And Floyd, pretty strong guy, tough. What are you doing? Gunther said, now see, Floyd, in life, there's a lot of wonderful things. You're never going to have them because you're going to die from smoking. You're never going to meet the beautiful people, the men and the ladies. You're never going to have the beautiful things. You won't have the time to make the money. You're not going to have the experiences that people like Mike and I have. Don't smoke again. And Floyd never did.
Just from that day on.
Yeah, he started again years later, but well, habits are hard to break.
Was it Dr. Gunther Claus that told you about or challenged you to write letters not using the word I?
Gunther, he gave me 1,000 valuable lessons. Here's a fun one. Write a letter to your children, 3 or 4 paragraphs about your life, but you can't use the word I. It's the hardest letter you'll ever write. So he taught me how to communicate without using the word I. For those of you that I've known a long time, and some of you I've known a long time in this room, and I'm very thankful that you're here, I don't use the word I very often, okay? It's you. Because that's really what selling is all about. It's not about this person, it's about that person. So he taught me how to write letters, and it was hard because our natural inclination is to refer to things that we do. So here, watch. Write a letter to your kids, or if you don't have kids, to your spouse, and if you don't have a spouse, to your parents if they're alive, and if they're not alive, to your best friend, 2 or 3 paragraphs about what you've done in life, and don't use the word I. It may take you weeks, but it'll be your best letter, okay?
Wow. Okay, the birth.
This is boring as hell for me.
Is it boring?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't like talking about me. So I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about the birth of MFO.
It was.
What year?
Well, first of all, it wasn't 9 months. It was a long pregnancy, okay? June 4th, 1975.
And you were really the first to market, would you say?
I'm sorry, say it again?
You were really the first to market. In other words, how many coaching companies were there at that time?
Well, there were no coaching companies in real estate at all until October of 1988, when I started the first coaching company for real estate. I'm sure there might have been coaching in other industries, but never real estate. So I started in 1975, and next month I'm going to do a seminar. This is going to be bizarre. In the hotel in Fresno, California, where I did my very first seminar. Okay. I mean, in those days, if you spoke at a Holiday Inn, you were excited because it was better than the Red Roof Inn, okay, which was $8 a night. So what I did for my first seminar, I drove to Fresno because I had a friend up there that lived up there, and he let me stay with he and his wife. And for 2 weeks, I went every morning and made office presentations to real estate companies, trying to convince the agents to buy a ticket for $25 to come and see me speak 2 weeks later on a Friday. And I sold 100 tickets. It was $2,500. It was, I was pretty excited. And I put together a little goofy cassette program. There was 2 of them. One was 4 cassettes on listing. One was 4 cassettes on selling to buyers. And they were $25 each. And I did the seminar, and like 50 people spent $50. So instead of making $2,500, I made $5,000. And I remember driving back from Fresno to Newport Beach, which is probably 4.5-hour drive, so maybe 150 miles. And I mean, I was so excited I almost couldn't drive because, you make first week in the business and you make $5,000. So I started by selling tickets every day. That's how I started selling my seminars. Now, full circle, guess what we do today? We sell tickets every day for our seminars.
You were operating out of your house, right?
Yep, had a house in Newport Beach.
Yeah.
And it was an apartment actually. It was a condo complex. I rented one, and You know, I'd get up in the morning and take a shower and clean up, put a suit and tie on, walk, it was 2-bedroom, walk out of 1 bedroom, walk 12 feet, open the door, which is my office, close the door, take my coat off, sit down and work. Saved a lot of gas. Okay. So I operated out of the house for 3 years.
Wow. So you're building MFO, things are going well.
Well, let's go back to, I was building MFO.
Okay.
Things weren't always going well.
What were some of the struggles there in the beginning?
Well, first of all, you know, at that time there were 5 speakers in the U.S. doing real estate seminars. Mike Ferry, Floyd Rickman, Tommy Hopkins, Danny Kennedy, and a guy named Cliff Baird, who was from Florida. And we pretty much did, from say 75 to probably the late 80s, the majority of all the seminar speeches for the real estate industry. So the challenge was trying to get people to hire us. So we would meet about 4 times a year, the 5 of us, and we would share the names of all the people that hired us, because, you know, I could call and say, Bob, if your next event, hire Floyd or hire Danny or hire Tommy, and they would do the same thing for me. So the challenge, now here's a new one. Is there ever a challenge getting good listings? Yes. I'm sorry? Yes. See, things don't change. My listings were getting people to hire me to speak, so I made 25 calls a day, 5 days a week for 5 straight years, asking people to hire me. That's all I did. I was on the phone, okay? We didn't have headsets. It was a rotary phone, for God's sakes, okay? So 25 calls took about an hour just to dial the number, much less the conversation. So all I did was prospect and do seminars.
Wow.
That's all I did.
Kids were what age at that time?
Well, let's see, 75. Pat was born in 71. So they were, you know, between 1 and probably 10 and 11.
Sure.
You know. But we were divorced at that time, and I bought a house around the corner, so I got to see them all the time. I just didn't live with them.
Sure. And in building MFO, what else did that look like? In other words,
well, about 5 years ago, unbeknownst to me why, and after it was done, they asked why. We had 5 IRS auditors walk in our company one day in Las Vegas to do an audit of the last 5 years, which we're fully prepared for because we don't cheat. Okay, I mean, you know, I'll never forget the auditor says to me, okay, on Sunday when you go to church and they pass the basket and you don't put anything in, do you still write off like a small donation? I said, no. Why not? Because I didn't put anything in. I'm not going to cheat. You know, I don't know if it was my Catholic upbringing. I don't cheat. That's it. So they were there for 3 months, audited my company, and then they left, and they owed me $19.40. Audited everything in my personal business life for 5 years, and they found out they owed me money, which really made them mad, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I said to them, give me a 20, I'll give you a change. You know. And this was the supervisor for the West Coast of the IRS. Somebody, obviously I'd made somebody mad in a seminar. Gee, hard to believe. Somebody would get mad. And evidently they had triggered this audit, okay, which those things happen in life. What were we talking about?
So, well.
Oh, how I built MFO, okay? See, I told you this would be all over the place. I started with seminars, then seminars and cassettes, then seminars and cassettes and videos, then seminars, cassettes, videos, and books. And then about probably 1985, I said, I'm stopping, I'm gonna quit, which I did. I took about 5 months off. I had a place in Maui, Hawaii. I just went over for 5 months, brought the kids over, and didn't do anything. Because see, the problem in my business, like yours, if you're not actively pursuing business, there's a good chance nobody's pursuing you. Yes or no? Yes. I'm sorry? Yes. So that young man, you're being pursued all the time? Yeah, lie to me, okay? So remember, if you're gonna lie to somebody, you gotta pick somebody dumber, okay? So every day I was calling, trying to get a job, to get a, remember in those days, all the major franchises had regions, and there were 10 franchises. Each had 30 regions, so there were 300 regions. There were 50 states, associations, boards of realtors, private companies. So you're calling. So only one day I said, God, I would get hired, Matt, and I would never know where I was gonna go. I never knew what the topic they had asked me to speak on. I never knew the size of the audience. I never knew the quality of the audience. You know, I mean, you know, I was on the road every day. I would leave on Sunday morning, get back on Friday night, you know, hi kids, and then leave on Sunday morning. And so I quit. And then I decided I would do seminars. I said, you know what? I've done it long enough. If you want to see me speak, buy a ticket and come and see me speak. And if you don't come and see me speak, I'm happy. So we went through that revolution from about 85 to probably 1995.
Wow.
Now, in the meantime, I started the coaching, and that was big, okay? Because our revenues, before we started the coaching, our revenues were running, you know, 3 or 4 million a year I was taking in. We started the coaching, all of a sudden I'm taking in 35 or 40 million a year. Now, let me help you. That's better. Okay?
Now, this is before I had the good fortune of meeting you, but I would hear all the time at your seminars, I mean, you were smashing phones, shaving your head. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
What happened to that, Mike Ferry?
I smoke a lot of dope. It's legal in Las Vegas. No, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, doing a seminar, and we had a group like this. It was a wonderful group of people. And there was a guy sitting where Kenny's sitting, well-dressed, and I'm in the middle of the seminar, and his cell phone rang. And he answers it. Hello? Hello? Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll see you. He set it down. I said, folks, don't do that again. That is rude. Don't do that again. Okay. 10 minutes later, it rings. He answers. Hello? Yeah, it's John. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Thanks. He set it down. Folks, don't get mad. If that rings again, I'm going to throw that phone in the trash. Do you understand? 5 minutes later, ring. I walked over, took it out of his hand, and I threw it against the wall, smashed it into 100 pieces. Solved the phone ringing. Okay? Now we take the break. Everybody leaves. Now I'm going to buy him a new phone, but I'm trying to make a point. So it's a hard way to make a point. Everybody leaves. He's sitting there. Big smile. Lady walks in the door. Everybody's gone but him and I. John, he goes, yeah, come here. John, don't move. Man, what is it? In the next room, they had a program for about 150 people that were special needs, and they were training him on how to deal with the world, and he had walked into the wrong room. I bought him a phone, a house, a car.
Okay.
Oops. So, you know, you learn some hard lessons in a business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of those things happened in my career. But I guess the challenge I always have felt, you know, if you're going to go to a seminar, for God's sakes, pay attention. You didn't come here to work on a deal or work on a file, and today you're not here to be texting somebody. And, you know, I mean, I have my kid, I have 5 kids, and Serena has 2, and we have, you know, 5 kids, and they have spouses and 9 grandchildren where, you know, we try to, every few months, have a big family dinner together, and we spend the day together. And, I mean, Matt will be at this end of the table, Tom at this end, and they're texting each other. Hey, Tom, that's Matt. He's your brother. Talk to him. Well, I didn't want you to hear it. Well, then you two leave the room and go talk. But see, that's society today. It's a lack of communication. So I address that when people in my seminars are screwing around. So I'm in Atlanta. I did a lot of programs in Atlanta. And we had 5,000 people at the RE/MAX convention in the Ford Theater, magnificent place. And I'm speaking, and all of a sudden, 6 ladies in the front row, I'm only speaking for an hour, stand up and start to walk out. Excuse me, folks. Ladies, where are you going? Front of the room. We're going to the bathroom. I said, can you not go by yourself? Do you have joint stalls? Do you sit and talk to each other? Did I go to the bathroom while you were sitting? Sit down. They did. I sold $400,000 of my products at the end of a 1-hour talk to that group. I guess some people like an authority. Do we need more authorities in our lives? Yes. It's the biggest challenge we have today. There's no authority. So in a seminar, I try to be the authority on helping an agent that wants to succeed. And not everybody wants to.
And then you started building out to, I think you started going over to Canada, maybe?
Oh, we went to Canada early on.
Early on.
Yeah, I've been going to Canada since 1980. It's actually probably my favorite place to visit. The Canadian people are wonderful, kind, open-minded, you know, and there's probably 4 of them now in Canada that are Canadian. Because it's it's the biggest open border in the world next to Southern California. Because Southern California is, you know, there's 14 million people in LA, and I think 7 of them are citizens. Kind of like Florida 30 years ago in Miami, okay? Wow. So we've been going to Canada we just did a 3-day event in Canada last week, I think it was. We had 1,400 people, and God, they're just great people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you guys are great people, but they're really great people. Okay? Everybody say why? Why? Because they do everything you say. And you guys fight it all the time. They just do it. We do. If I say jump, they get up. Okay, so it's a very unique place. I love it up there.
So speaking there is a little different than speaking here.
In the United States, we take the center of the country, because there's 3 markets. There's the West Coast, the center, and the East Coast. Like Florida, you have the East Coast and West Coast. Those are different states. Okay, the West Coast is from the Northeast, the East Coast, Northeast, the West Coast from the central part of the country. So we lived in Naples, and our neighbors were from Iowa and Illinois and Tennessee. Then we'd come over here. Nobody from Iowa buys a home in Boca. Okay, I mean, if you're not from the Northeast, get the hell out of the way. Okay, so it's such a different behavior pattern, you know, and that's what you discover as you travel around the country, is the behavior patterns of people.
Yeah.
It's sometimes kind of fun and sometimes weird.
I remember you telling us a story about how you got one of your first standing ovations at a NAR conference.
I'm always in trouble with NAR. And I don't know why, because, I mean, it's a wonderful organization. No, let's get clear. It's a political organization that thrives on collecting dues from paying members. Hello, that's what they are. And I mean, I don't care how they disguise it. So I've always referred to NAR as non-active realtors, because that's what I feel, okay? So in 1985, towards the end of when I would get hired to speak and before I did my own stuff, maybe it was 86, I'm doing a seminar for NAR in New York City at the, I think it's called the Kravitz Conference Center. It's a wonderful conference center in New York City. And I got 4,000 people in the audience. And I mean, of all the topics they could pick, they wanted me to speak on how to list a for sale by owner for 2 hours. That is boring as hell, okay? So I spoke for 2 hours about it. And I'm not a motivational speaker, and I'm the first to admit that. I'm a demotivational speaker. People are more upset than happy when they leave, okay? Because reality, you know, I don't have any money, because you don't talk to people. I don't like people. Get out of the business, okay? I had a guy approach me last summer. He walks up on the stage, Ken, and as he walked up, I stopped, and I looked at him, and he started walking backwards. So I started walking towards him, because I can't hear. And here's what he said to me. I'm really shy. I'm an introvert. I really don't like people. Can you give me any advice? I said, quit the business and get a job. He goes, why would you say that? I said, because you've given me every reason why you're not going to succeed. Well, what would I do if I quit real estate? I said, get a job at a cemetery. It's all expired. Didn't get it. Okay, and he walked away, okay? So I'm not a motivational speaker. So I finished this talk, and I get a standing ovation and I mean, it was not even like a thank you. It was like, ah! And I'm going, Jesus, I thought maybe somebody else had been speaking behind me to him. I walk off the stage, and there's a lady in the corner, and I look at her, I said, hello. She goes, I need to speak to you. I said, okay. I'm the lady that hired you to speak today for NAR. I said, well, thank you. I never had a chance to say thank you. Well, I want you to know you'll never be invited to speak to NAR again. I said, you're kidding. No. I said, well, why not? I said, I just got I got a standing ovation, 4,000 people. I didn't like what you said. And she had a notebook like this, and she had pages of notes. And I said, what didn't you like? First of all, at one point you stated that the training in real estate is designed for the stupid, the dumb, and the ignorant. You said that. I said, correct. Well, I want you to know that we create most of the training. I said, well, then don't ban me, ban yourself. She didn't take that well. So we went through all the things she written down that I had said, which I had said. Then she did say one thing. She goes, "You said open houses were stupid." I said, "I did not say that. I wrote it down. You said open houses are stupid." I said, no, they're stupid, dumb, ignorant, pathetic, and ridiculous, non-productive, non-profitable. If you're going to quote me right. So I've never been back to NAR, but I'm okay. I still made it, okay? So I'm controversial. I'm a pain in the ass. I challenge people. I call people out when they don't do what they're supposed to do. And somebody will say, "What kind of car do you drive?" "A Honda." I'll spit on the floor, and I do all that stuff. I entertain myself. Okay.
Okay.
How many pages do you have of questions?
No, just.
Jesus Christ! It's 10:30.
Yes, and that's. And that's
when are we taking a break?
Right now. So before we get up,
hold it. I'm 73. I have to go potty a lot. So when we take the break, I'm going to be first because that bathroom holds about 4. I'm just kidding. I have an empty bottle. Don't look.
Before we take a break, when we come back, we're going to go over some really, really great topics, including some tragic moments, along with how to deal with competition, mindset. We're going to really get into a lot of different pieces that Mike has built in his life, which is going to be really something fascinating. I want to just take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. They're the ones who made this possible today. So I would like for you to please go and introduce yourself there in the back of the room. We have Access Insurance, Jared Mansell. Let's please give him a round of applause.
Hold it. Who's been to my seminars before? You give him a big round of applause. Come on.
American Van Lines Moving Company, Brian McGuire.
Pretty important. Thank you.
We have Armored Title, Tali Israel here in the back.
Wow.
Excellent work they do. We also have Launch Media Group that helps agents get their brand out there. They're in the corner over there.
Good job.
Special thank you to MGIC, who's a mortgage insurance company. And they don't necessarily deal with agents directly, but they wanted to support this event because they were a big believer in getting value out of it. So thank you, MGIC.
So that's magic. Yeah.
And our boys over at Nationwide Property Appraisal Services, whose service levels is second to none. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. We have a 10-minute break, and then we will begin. Thank you.
See you back here in 10 minutes.